My name is Lucas, and this is my story of family betrayal and revenge. After 20 years lost in the system, I found my family in Wyoming, only to uncover the chilling truth. They didn't lose me. They erased me. Now I've returned, not for love, but for justice. And they never saw it coming. Please subscribe for more exciting family revenge and betrayal stories. Also like our videos to give us an encouragement for more. Welcome back to the story. I was 6 years old the last time I saw my father alive. It was a Saturday morning in Cheyenne. I remember the light, the way it streamed through the kitchen window and caught the dust in the air like glitter. Dad had just come in from the yard. His boots muddy, his flannel rolled up to his elbows. He smelled like pine trees and sweat. I was sitting on the counter, dangling my legs, eating cereal straight from the box. My older brother, Colton, was at the table drawing a picture of our dog, Rusty, with crayons so dull they barely left a mark. Colton was 10, older, smarter, tougher. He used to ruffle my hair and call me Squeak. I hated it, but secretly, I liked the attention. That morning, Dad kissed the top of my head and said, "You two take care of your mama today, all right? I've got a job out in Casper." He didn't come back. We got the call that night. A scaffolding collapsed. Instant. That's the word the officer used, like it was supposed to make it easier. Instant. Like the pain should hurt less if there was no time to say goodbye. I don't remember much of the funeral. I just remember holding onto Colton's hand so tight, it went red. After that, things at home started to blur. My mother, Caroline, stopped singing. She stopped cooking. Some days, she barely left her room. Colton tried. He made us peanut butter sandwiches and read bedtime stories even though he was barely a kid himself. But he couldn't fix her. Then one night, everything changed. It was late. I'd fallen asleep in front of the TV. When I opened my eyes, a man I didn't know was standing in the living room. Tall, angry eyes. My mother stood behind him, quiet. He asked where Colton was. I said I didn't know. Then he looked at me like I was in the way. Like I was a problem. That night, a woman with a clipboard showed up. She had a badge and a soft voice that didn't match the way she pulled me away from the only home I knew. "You're gonna be safe now, Lucas," she said. Safe? I was shoved into a car with a blanket I didn't recognize. A duffel bag with 2 shirts, and a social worker who wouldn't tell me where we were going. When I asked about my mom, she just said, "She needs time." Time. Weeks passed. Then months. I kept thinking it was a mistake. That Colton would come get me. That my mom would call, but they didn't. Holidays came and went. Birthdays too. I was moved from home to home. Some kind. Some cold. All temporary. Eventually, I stopped asking, stopped hoping, and started forgetting. But one thing I never forgot, never could, was the moment I realized I wasn't lost, I was given away, and the people who were supposed to love me the most, forgot I existed. After that night, my life became a series of doorways. New homes. New rules. New faces pretending they wanted me there. Some did. Most didn't. I learned quickly how to pack a bag in under 5 minutes, how to smile just enough to avoid questions, and how to disappear into the background. I became a shadow. A placeholder child with no real name, just a file number and a birthday no one remembered. At first, I counted the days. I kept track on scraps of notebook paper, hoping someone would come. My mother. Colton. Even that social worker who promised I'd be safe, but no one came. The years blurred into each other like rain on a windshield. First it was Laramie, then Torrington, then a group home in Casper that smelled like bleach and regret. Some foster homes gave me food but no kindness. Others gave me silence. I learned that temporary placement could last anywhere from a week to a year, depending on how many beds were open and how many kids were harder to deal with than me. I wasn't loud. I wasn't violent, I was just forgettable. What saved me, barely, were the memories. Not many. Just flashes. My mom humming Walkin' After Midnight while brushing her hair. The way Colton used to hoist me onto his shoulders when the snow was too deep. The scent of Dad's work gloves, I clung to those fragments like they were treasures. Replayed them at night like lullabies. Sometimes, I'd convince myself that maybe they had looked for me. Maybe the state lost the paperwork. Maybe my mom was out there somewhere, sick with guilt, trying to find her missing son, maybe, but every time a new caseworker called me the wrong name or handed me a trash bag and said, "You're moving today," the fantasy cracked a little more. By the time I turned 16, I stopped talking about my family. Stopped waiting for birthdays, stopped believing I had roots. People say the system is broken. But it's not broken, it was never built for kids like me. We weren't rescued. We were sorted. Labeled. Moved. Forgotten. At 17, I aged out of the last home in Riverton. No goodbye. No card. Just a garbage bag of clothes and a bus voucher. I remember standing at the terminal, watching families hug their kids, laughing, crying. I didn't cry. I hadn't in years. I told myself I didn't need anyone. That I'd start over. Build something new, but late at night, in tiny studio apartments or shelters that smelled of mold, I'd still hear her voice sometimes. My mom's voice, soft and far away, and I'd see Colton, grinning with chipped teeth, shouting, "Come on, squeak." As we raced down the frozen street, I didn't know it then, but those memories. They were anchors. Even if I was a ghost in the system, I was still someone's son. Still someone's brother, and deep down, I never stopped wanting to be found. I never expected the past to come back. By 26, I had finally stopped looking over my shoulder. I had a job at a welding shop in Rock Springs. A beat-up Chevy, and a small apartment above a liquor store. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time, I had something close to stability. The DNA test was a joke at first, something a coworker dared me to do. "Come on, Granger," he said, "what if you find out you're royalty or something?" We laughed. I ordered the kit, spit in the tube, and forgot about it. 3 weeks later, the email came, "You have a close family match." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't open it right away. My heart was pounding like a drum. I told myself it was probably a glitch, someone with the same last name. But deep down, I knew. Something was about to change. Her name was Brenda Livingston, 72 years old. Living just outside Sheridan. She messaged me through the app first, "Lucas. Are you Caroline's boy?" That name. I hadn't heard it in years. It hit me like a truck. I couldn't even type at first. I just stared at those words, my hands shaking. I messaged her back. Told her I wasn't sure, but my mother's name was Caroline. My brother's name was Colton. We used to live in Cheyenne. She called me less than an hour later. Her voice trembled the whole time. "We thought you were dead." Brenda was my mom's older sister. She told me that after my father died, Caroline had a breakdown. She started seeing a man who drove a wedge between her and the rest of the family. Then one day, I was just gone. No answers. No warning. She claimed the state took me unfairly. That it was too late to fix it. That I wouldn't remember them anyway. She never forgave herself, Brenda said. But she never forgave anyone else either. Colton, she told me, had tried to find me when he turned 18. Reached out to the state. Got shut down. Eventually, he stopped asking questions. Built a life. But he never forgot. They were both still in Sheridan, and they wanted to see me. I didn't say yes right away. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Everything I'd buried, every memory, every hope, came rushing back like a flash flood. What if it was all a lie? What if they didn't want me? Or worse, what if they did, and I couldn't recognize them anymore, but something in me, the part that still remembered warm kitchens and childhood laughter, whispered one word, "Go." so I packed a bag, bought a bus ticket, and headed north, back to the place I once called home, back to a family I wasn't sure I still belonged to. But one thing was certain, I was done being forgotten. I'll never forget the way Sheridan looked from the air, quiet neighborhoods tucked beneath a blanket of pines, pale streets winding like veins through the hills. It felt like I was flying over someone else's life. A postcard version of what mine might have been if things had gone differently. Aunt Brenda met me at the airport. She had silver hair pulled into a braid and eyes that welled up the moment she saw me. She pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "You look just like your daddy," she whispered. We drove in silence most of the way, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. She kept glancing at me like I might disappear if she looked away too long. Then, we pulled up to the house. A long gravel driveway, split-rail fencing, a porch swing that creaked in the breeze. It looked like something out of a magazine, and there they were, my mother. Standing on the porch in a cardigan and jeans, thinner than I remembered, face lined with time but unmistakably her. She covered her mouth the second she saw me and broke into sobs. And Colton. Broad shoulders. Square jaw. Still had that cowlick above his right eyebrow. He stepped forward slowly, like he couldn't believe it was real. We stood there for a beat too long. Then I took the first step. And suddenly, I was in my mother's arms, buried in a perfume I couldn't name but somehow still recognized. "I thought I'd lost you forever," she cried. "I thought you stopped looking," I replied. She winced at that, but said nothing. Colton hugged me next. Tight. Stronger than I remembered. He didn't say much, just clapped my back and whispered, "I'm glad you're home, little brother." They brought me inside. The house was spotless, bright walls, family portraits. The scent of fresh pie hanging in the air like bait. Everything felt warm, welcoming, too welcoming. Dinner was roast beef and mashed potatoes, and stories that felt a little too polished. Colton told me about his real estate business. Caroline ran a wellness retreat out of the converted barn. They were respected, admired, even featured in a local magazine, but there were no pictures of me. No photos of the early years. No trace that I had ever existed in this perfect family tableau. When I asked, my mom's smile faltered. "It was just too painful to look at those," she said softly. Colton nodded, adding, "We tried to move forward. We didn't know how else to cope." Their words sounded right. But their eyes didn't match. That night, I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. The bed was soft, the room warm. But everything inside me was cold. I'd come home to the family I'd spent 2 decades dreaming about, but something was wrong. They said they were happy to have me back, so why did it feel like they were hiding something? The house was too quiet at night, it creaked in all the wrong places, floorboards that groaned like they had secrets to tell. Vents that carried whispers from room to room. I couldn't sleep. Not really. Not with this buzzing in my chest that wouldn't go away. On the third night, I got up for a glass of water. It was past midnight. I was padding down the hallway when I heard voices drifting from the kitchen. Low. Urgent. I paused at the corner. The lights were off, but I could make out their silhouettes, Colton and Caroline, standing close. The fridge light cast a pale glow across their faces. They didn't see me. "We have to keep him from digging," Colton said. "He's already asking questions," Caroline whispered. "We just need to keep things contained. He can't find out what really happened. It would destroy everything we built." My heart froze. I backed away slowly, careful not to creak the floor. I returned to the guest room, hands trembling. What did they mean by, "what really happened"? What were they hiding? The next morning, nothing had changed on the surface. Colton cracked eggs while Mom sipped coffee. But everything felt fake now, like a stage set. Their smiles were just props. That day, while they were both out running errands, I decided to look. I started in the office. It was too clean. Desk perfectly arranged. Filing cabinet locked. But I remembered something Dad used to do. He always taped a spare key under his desk drawer. I checked. Same habit, I unlocked the cabinet, inside, paperwork, utility bills. And a sealed envelope with my name on it. Inside that envelope were 3 documents. The first was a voluntary relinquishment of parental rights. Signed by my mother. Dated 6 months after my father died. The second was a letter from Colton to the state, written when he was 18, asking about a missing sibling. Claiming no one would give him answers. The request was marked denied, case closed. The third. A handwritten note. My name at the top. And then, just 4 words, don't tell him anything. No signature. No context. I sank into the office chair, heart thudding. My mother hadn't lost me. She gave me up, and Colton knew. Maybe not at first. But at some point, he found out. And instead of finding me, he helped her bury it. They built this beautiful life on a lie. And now that I was back, I was a threat to it. I closed the drawer, locked everything back the way I found it. When they got home later, I smiled like nothing had changed, but inside, everything had, whatever bond one thought we were rebuilding. It was fake, they had lied. They had chosen to forget me. Now, I was done waiting for the truth. I was going to take it. I stared at the signed document for hours that night. The name scrawled at the bottom, Caroline Granger, was unmistakable. My mother's handwriting. Her signature. Her decision. I read every line again and again, as if the wording might somehow change. But it didn't. There it was, in plain legal language. I, Caroline Granger, willingly relinquish all parental rights of Lucas Granger. There were no signs of force. No emergency declaration. No evidence of a system failure. Just a clean, calculated abandonment. She hadn't lost me, she let me go, and Colton, he knew. The letter he sent to the state when he turned 18, it was too specific. Too precise. It wasn't the search of a brother who believed I'd been kidnapped or lost in some tragic accident. He knew who I was. Where I came from. And when they shut him down, he let the trail go cold. I remembered how he looked at me when I arrived. The hug. The quiet guilt in his eyes. At the time, I thought it was emotion. Now I knew better. It was shame. The truth lodged in my chest like a splinter I couldn't pull out. My whole life I'd dreamed of being found. I imagined my mother sick with grief, Colton keeping a picture of us as kids, searching for answers no one would give him. I told myself stories that made the loneliness hurt less. That made my abandonment feel accidental, but now. All I saw was choice. They chose to erase me, and when that erasure didn't last, when fate or time or DNA pulled me back, they smiled and welcomed me like nothing had happened. The realization left me hollow. The next morning at breakfast, Caroline slid a plate of pancakes in front of me. Humming softly to herself. Colton was scrolling through his phone like nothing had changed, but everything had. I looked at my mother and tried to feel something, anger, sadness, anything. But what came was worse, nothing. I had already lost her. I just hadn't known it until now. You okay, sweetheart? She asked, brushing a crumb from my shirt. I forced a smile. Just tired. She nodded, not knowing the weight behind those words. That afternoon, while they went to town for supplies, I sat in the living room and stared at the photos on the wall. Family barbecues. Ski trips. Colton's graduation. Caroline's wellness retreat ribbon cutting. I wasn't in any of them. It was like I had died and no one mourned, but I wasn't dead, I was alive. And back, and the more they tried to act like nothing happened, the more I realized what I had to do. I wasn't here to fit back into their lives, I was here to expose them. I left without a word. No note. No dramatic confrontation. Just packed my bag one morning while Caroline and Colton were still asleep and walked out the back door like a breeze slipping through a crack in the window. But I didn't leave Sheridan. They thought I vanished. Probably figured I'd run back to Rock Springs or drifted off like a ghost again, but ghosts don't run, they haunt. I moved into a rundown studio above a mechanic shop near the edge of town. The place was dusty and small, but it was mine, and more importantly, it was close enough to watch. I picked up a job at a local supply yard. Hard work, but honest. People in Sheridan talk a lot if you listen quietly, especially when they think you're just another pair of gloved hands moving lumber. I kept my head down, asked the right questions at the right time, and slowly began to untangle the web that Colton and Caroline had built. Colton's real estate business wasn't as clean as he liked to make it seem. I found out he'd been leaning hard on new homeowners, pressuring older ranchers to sell, skimming off zoning kickbacks, and using shady LLCs to flip land for triple the price. It didn't take long to find someone who'd been burned. An old rancher named Dale tipped me off. Said Colton sold him a piece of property near the Bighorn foothills, then blocked his water rights through city channels he conveniently had influence over. He's got friends in places that don't have names, Dale grumbled, spitting in the dirt. But even snakes can be stepped on. Caroline wasn't innocent either. Her wellness retreat looked pretty on brochures: yoga in the barn, herbal detox kits, essential oils blessed by local healers. But she wasn't licensed. No medical staff. Just overpriced junk and unqualified advice. I met a woman named Darcy who'd attended one of Caroline's cleansing weekends and ended up in the ER with liver complications. Caroline offered a refund if she signed an NDA. That was the thing about Sheridan. It was small. Too small for secrets to stay buried long. I started collecting receipts, emails, transaction records, testimonies. Quietly. Carefully. I built a file thick enough to snap a desk drawer. I wasn't going to shout or scream. That wasn't my style. When the time came, I would let the truth do the talking. Revenge isn't always a loud storm. Sometimes it starts as a whisper. A wind rustling through the trees. I had been their ghost once, forgotten, overlooked, erased, but now I was the storm creeping in on a sunny day, and they wouldn't even see it coming. It started with a single envelope. Typed. Anonymous. No fingerprints. No return address. Inside, copies of zoning documents, bank transfers, and a list of properties purchased by Colton Granger through shell companies that linked back to a town official's brother-in-law. The package landed on the desk of a local journalist known for chewing through small-town scandals like jerky. I didn't have to sign my name. The truth was enough. Within 2 weeks, headlines began to buzz. First small, buried on page 6 of the Sheridan Times, developers' land deals raise questions over zoning conflicts. Then louder. Investigators started sniffing around. State-level auditors. Environmental watchdogs. Suddenly, Colton wasn't grinning at ribbon cuttings, he was canceling meetings and dodging phone calls. The fallout was slow, surgical. Clients started pulling out of deals. His biggest investor backed out after his name was dragged into the zoning debacle. Lawsuits followed. Not 1, but 3. Property misrepresentation. Breach of contract. Fraud. Each one was a nail. Then I turned my attention to Caroline. I'd collected emails from her assistant, testimonies from former clients, even health inspection photos from the barn-turned-wellness center, where mold clung to the beams like cancer. I sent those to the Wyoming Department of Health, anonymously, of course. Then I contacted a local podcast that specialized in uncovering dangerous pseudoscience. They jumped on the story like wolves. One exposé later, Caroline's brand was tarnished. Refund requests poured in. The retreat shut down under state investigation for operating without proper certification, and still, I said nothing. I watched from a distance, quiet and composed, as the empire they built, on lies, on erasure, began to sink. Aunt Brenda called me one day, voice trembling. Colton's business is falling apart. Caroline's not answering the phone. Do you know what's happening? I told her I didn't. I wasn't lying. I didn't know everything. Just enough. Sheridan's golden family was unraveling. At the grocery store, people whispered. On Facebook, speculation ran wild. And behind the lace curtains and small-town smiles, the truth buzzed like flies over a rotting secret. They had spent 20 years pretending I never existed, so now, I returned the favor. by becoming the hand that unraveled their perfect story, and when Colton showed up one night, pounding on my door, eyes bloodshot and jaw clenched, I didn't flinch. He shouted, "What did you do?" I stared at him through the screen door, calm as still water. "I told the truth," I said. "You just didn't expect it to speak so loud." He didn't have a response, just stood there, the weight of his choices finally visible on his face. I shut the door and let him walk away, back into the house of cards he built, now crumbling plank by plank. I didn't burn them down, I just lit the first match and let the wind do the rest. It was a quiet morning when Colton showed up. Late autumn had settled into Sheridan, the trees were bare, the wind sharp, and the sky the color of ash. I was sipping coffee on the porch of my small cabin just outside Dayton, the place I'd made my home after everything fell apart. He didn't knock. He just stood at the edge of the gravel path like a man lost in his own hometown. His once perfect hair was messy, and the tailored shirts he always wore had been replaced with a hoodie and jeans. His eyes, those same eyes I used to look up to, were hollow now. The weight of the past, the truth, and his own silence had finally caught up to him. "Lucas," he said, voice raw. "Can I talk to you?" I didn't answer. Just gave a small nod and pointed to the chair across from me. He sat down slowly, like even his bones were tired. For a while, neither of us spoke. The wind rustled through the pine trees, and a hawk cried in the distance. Sheridan always had that deceptive peace, beautiful, quiet. But never truly still. He broke first. "You destroyed everything," he said. Not with anger, just confusion. Regret. The business, Mom's retreat. Our reputation. It's all gone. I looked at him, my face calm. "I didn't destroy anything. I just pulled the curtain back." The mess was already there. Colton leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Why? You could have confronted us. We could have. You erased me." I said it flatly, with no venom. "You let her sign me away. You let me vanish. And then you built a life pretending I never existed." He didn't deny it, didn't offer excuses, didn't say he was sorry. Not yet. Instead, his voice cracked. "We didn't know what to do. Mom, she broke after Dad died. That man she was with. He made her choose. I was just a kid. I didn't know how to fight her. And when I tried, it was already too late." I stared out at the trees, the rising sun painting the frost gold. "I didn't come back for revenge, Colton. I came back to remember who I was. To stop pretending I was someone disposable. I came back to remind you, and her, that I existed." Colton swallowed hard. His hands trembled. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. I nodded. "Good. Because I'm not offering it. Not yet." He looked up, eyes red. "So what now?" I stood, stretched slowly, and poured him the rest of the coffee from my thermos. "Now you live with the truth." Like I had to. He took the cup with shaking hands. There was no shouting. No dramatic exit. Just silence. A heavy, healing kind of silence. As he walked back to his truck, I sat down again, breathing in the mountain air. This wasn't the ending I imagined growing up, but it was the one I chose. Not revenge, power, peace, closure. I didn't just come back to confront them, I came back to reclaim myself, and I did.